If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Let's continue. The mansion on the Upper East Side always had that imposing air, with its wrought iron gates and gardens perfectly manicured by a staff Helena barely knew. Everything there breathed success, money, and distance. It was as if every inch of that house had been designed to impress important guests, never to hold memories or welcome hugs. Helena had been working there for almost 2 years, but she still felt out of place among the expensive furniture and the heavy silences that echoed through the marble hallways. The house had 5 bedrooms, a library no one used, a formal dining room where meals were eaten in awkward silence, and a kitchen equipped with state-of-the-art appliances that looked more like museum pieces than tools for daily use. Helena woke up every day at 6 in the morning. Her routine always started the same way: a cup of black coffee, strong just the way she liked it, sipped while standing by the kitchen sink as she looked out at the still sleeping garden. Then she would start preparing breakfast. For Lucas, she always made pancakes because the boy loved them, especially when she drew smiley faces with chocolate syrup. They were small details that made his eyes sparkle a little, even if only for a few minutes. That Thursday morning, however, something in the air felt different. Helena felt it from the moment she opened her eyes, still in the darkness of her small room at the back of the house. It was a strange feeling, a premonition she couldn't name. The sun streamed through the enormous living room windows, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the air, creating those golden rays that cut through the room and gave the mansion an almost unreal appearance. Helena was in the kitchen, preparing Lucas's breakfast, mixing the pancake batter in the blender, when she heard the doorbell. It was an insistent, almost impatient ring, as if whoever was outside had no time to waste. She glanced at the clock on the kitchen wall. 7:15 in the morning. It was too early for deliveries, too early for visitors. A chill ran down her spine. She wiped her hands on the embroidered apron the boy had given her for her last birthday, and walked to the front door, feeling an inexplicable tightness in her chest that seemed to squeeze harder with every step. When she opened the door, she was met by a man in an impeccable grey suit, a navy blue tie, and a black leather briefcase tucked under his arm. He had a professional smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, and introduced himself as Frank Miller, the transport coordinator from the Renewal Center. Helena felt the floor disappear from under her feet. She knew this day would come. Mr. Robert Anderson had mentioned transferring Lucas to a rehabilitation center a few weeks ago, but hearing about something and seeing that man standing on her doorstep were 2 completely different experiences. Helena invited the man in and asked him to wait in the living room while she got Lucas. Climbing the stairs to the boy's room, each step felt heavier than the last. The white marble staircase with its mahogany banister reflected the morning light in an almost cruel way, illuminating too brightly a moment Helena wanted to hide in darkness. She had known Lucas since the day he came back from the hospital, 3 months after the terrible accident that changed his life forever. On that fateful day, something had happened that no one in the family could speak of openly. Mrs. Beatrice Anderson, a vibrant 35-year-old woman with a smile that could light up any room, had passed away in a sudden and devastating way. It was a delicate way of saying she didn't survive her injuries from the accident, that her heart stopped beating before they even reached the hospital, that Lucas was left motherless before he could even fully understand what was happening to him. Lucas survived, but he lost the use of his legs and gained a wheelchair, that he still looked at with a mixture of anger and resignation. Helena remembered perfectly the day the boy came home. She was in the kitchen preparing a special snack, trying to make something that might bring a little joy to this child who had lost so much. When the door opened and she saw Robert walk in carrying Lucas, both with empty expressions and eyes red from crying, Helena felt her heart break into a million pieces. In the first few months, Lucas barely spoke. He would spend hours staring into space, clutching the teddy bear his mother had given him for his last birthday. Helena remembered Beatrice picking out that bear in a chic boutique on Madison Avenue, saying she wanted something special because Lucas was growing up and would soon outgrow childish toys. How ironic life was. Now that bear was the only tangible thing left of Beatrice's presence, and Lucas held onto it as if it were a life raft in an ocean of pain. When Helena entered Lucas's room, she found the boy sitting on his bed, looking out the window. He was only 9 years old, but his eyes carried an ancient, profound sadness. That didn't match his age. His brown hair fell over his forehead, and he was wearing light blue pajamas with rocket ship designs that were already getting too small. Helena approached slowly and sat beside him on the bed. "Lucas, sweetie, someone is here to pick you up. It's from the center your dad mentioned. Do you remember?" The boy turned his face to her, and Helena saw fear spread across those brown eyes that so often sought her out for comfort. Lucas didn't answer. He just hugged the teddy bear he always kept close, a memento of his mother. Helena felt her throat tighten, but she had to be strong. She had to be what she had always been for this boy. A safe harbor, even when the whole world seemed to be falling apart. She helped Lucas get dressed, choosing comfortable sweatpants and a t-shirt from his favorite team. As she helped him transfer to his wheelchair, Helena noticed every detail. The arms that had grown stronger with physical therapy exercises, but still trembled when he was nervous. The pale skin, a result of months spent indoors away from the sun. The way he bit his lower lip when he was trying not to cry. They went down to the living room together, where the man in the suit was waiting with that same neutral, professional expression. He greeted Lucas with a forced cheerfulness, making comments about how wonderful the center was and how he would make lots of friends there. Lucas didn't respond. He kept his eyes fixed on the floor, clutching the teddy bear even tighter. "Is Mr. Anderson not home?" Helena asked, trying to hide the discomfort she felt. "Mr. Anderson informed us he would be in an important meeting this morning, but he expressly authorized the transfer. It's all documented here," the man replied, tapping lightly on his leather briefcase. Helena felt a wave of indignation rise in her chest. How could Robert not be present for such an important moment in his son's life? But she knew the answer. Robert Anderson was one of New York's most successful businessmen, the owner of a construction company that was putting up buildings all over the city. Anderson Construction had dozens of projects scattered across the 5 boroughs, from residential towers in Midtown to commercial complexes in the financial district. Before the accident, Robert had been a balanced man. He worked hard, yes, but he always made a point of being present for important moments. He had dinner at home at least 3 times a week. He took Lucas to play ball in the park on Sundays. He kissed Beatrice every morning before leaving for work. Helena remembered seeing them dancing in the living room, laughing together while Lucas ran around them. But since losing his wife, Robert had thrown himself even deeper into his work, as if every signed contract, every meeting, every business trip could erase the guilt that consumed him from within. He left the house before 7 in the morning and came back after 10 at night. He spent weekends at the office. He traveled constantly to other cities, overseeing projects, closing deals, running away from the reality that awaited him at home. Helena had tried to talk to him several times, suggesting he spend more time with Lucas, but Robert always had an excuse. An important contract, a meeting that couldn't be postponed, a problem on a construction site that only he could solve. Helena knew that guilt well. She saw it in Robert's eyes whenever he looked at his son. The accident happened when Robert insisted the family go to dinner at a restaurant on Park Avenue, despite the torrential rain falling that night. Beatrice had suggested they stay home, but Robert was celebrating a huge contract and wanted to celebrate. On the way, a car lost control on the wet pavement. The rest was history, a history that Robert carried like a stone in his chest and that pushed him further and further away from his surviving son. As Helena helped Lucas put on his jacket, she heard the sound of high heels coming down the stairs. It was Megan Taylor, Robert's new partner. She appeared in the living room like an apparition, all elegance and control. She wore a nude dress with a pearl necklace, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Megan was 38, almost 10 years younger than Robert, and had appeared in his life 6 months after Beatrice's death. No one knew exactly where she came from or how they met. Robert never talked about it, and Megan maintained an air of mystery about her past. She said she worked as a business management consultant, that she traveled a lot, that she had important connections. Suddenly she was just there, having dinner with Robert, sleeping at the house, giving orders to the staff, and reorganizing the family routine. Helena tried to talk to Robert about how fast everything was happening, but he just said that Megan understood him, that she helped him deal with the pain, that she was exactly what he needed at that moment. What Helena saw, however, was a woman who manipulated every situation with surgical precision. Megan knew exactly when to be sweet and when to be firm. She knew how to make Robert feel guilty without ever saying it, directly. She knew how to present her ideas in a way that made them seem like his own. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible art, but Helena recognized it because she had worked in enough houses to know this type of person. "Good morning, Frank," Megan said, greeting the man from the center with familiarity. "I hope your drive here was smooth." "Perfectly smooth, Ms. Taylor. We're ready to take young Lucas." Megan knelt in front of Lucas's wheelchair and smiled, lightly touching the boy's face. "You're going to love the center, sweetie. It's the best place in the country. For kids like you. It has a heated pool, specialized physical therapists, other boys and girls. You'll recover so quickly that you'll be running around again in no time." Lucas didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the floor, and Helena could see a tear rolling down his cheek. She felt the urge to scoop the boy into her arms and run away, to take him far from that house, from that woman, from that fate that seemed wrong in every possible way. "Ms. Taylor, couldn't Mr. Anderson have come? It would be important for Lucas to have his father here at a time like this," Helena said, trying to keep her voice steady. Megan stood up and looked at Helena with that condescending smile she always used when someone questioned her decisions. "Helena, dear, Robert is building a better future for all of us. He trusts me to handle these details, and believe me, this center is exactly what Lucas needs. No coddling, no overprotecting him. He needs discipline, routine, professionals who know how to handle complex cases." The word coddling echoed in Helena's head like an insult. She had spent months taking care of Lucas, nights awake when he had nightmares and screamed for his mother, calling for her through his tears, saying he didn't want to wake up because in his dreams she was still alive. Helena would stay by his bed, holding his hand, softly singing the same lullabies Beatrice used to sing. Mornings helping with the painful physical therapy exercises that made the boy groan in pain, but were necessary to maintain some muscle tone in his legs. Helena encouraged him, counted to 10 with him, promised hot chocolate when they were done. Afternoons reading stories, especially ones about adventures and heroes, because Lucas said he wanted to be strong like them one day. Drawing together, coloring horses and rocket ships and imaginary landscapes. Lucas had a talent for drawing, and Helena kept every one of his drawings in a special folder, saying that one day they would have an exhibition, trying to give a little joy back to this child who had lost so much. There were also the simple moments that Helena cherished in her heart. The times Lucas laughed at some silly joke she made. The mornings he woke up more cheerful and asked to have breakfast in the garden. The afternoons they watched cartoons together, Lucas explaining the characters to her with adorable seriousness. The Sundays they made cookies together in the kitchen, Helena letting him mix the ingredients, even if it made a mess. And now this woman reduced it all to coddling. Helena wanted to scream, to say that Lucas didn't need discipline, he needed love. He needed his father to be present, a house that felt like a home and not a museum, hugs and conversations and the certainty that he wasn't alone in the world. But Helena was just the nanny, an employee, and Megan had made that very clear from the first day she took control of that house. The man from the center began to collect the bags Helena had packed the night before. Inside were Lucas's clothes, his medications, the drawing pads he loved so much, colored pencils, the teddy bear, and a few photos of his mother that he kept under his pillow. Helena had chosen each item with care, thinking of everything that might bring the boy comfort far from home. As the man carried the bags to the car, Helena knelt in front of Lucas and held his hands. The boy's hands were cold, trembling. She wanted to say so many things, but the words wouldn't come out. She wanted to promise that everything would be okay, that she would visit every week, that he would be back soon. But something inside her, a deep and unsettling intuition, told her those promises would be empty. There was something in the way Megan had arranged everything so quickly, something in the way that man from the center avoided her gaze, something in the air that felt charged with an invisible tension. Helena looked into Lucas's brown eyes and saw fear, not just the normal fear of a child leaving home for the first time, but a deep, visceral fear, as if Lucas felt in the depths of his soul that something was wrong. Children have that ability, that intuition, that adults lose over time. They sense when something isn't right, even if they can't explain why. "I'm going to miss you, Helena," Lucas whispered, his voice so fragile it sounded like it could break at any moment. "Me too, sweetie. But you'll be back soon, you'll see. And when you come back, we'll make that chocolate cake you love so much. Deal?" Lucas nodded, but his eyes said something else. They said he didn't believe her, that he was scared, that he wanted to scream, but didn't know how. Helena hugged him tightly, smelling the baby shampoo in his hair, feeling his small arms tighten around her neck as if they never wanted to let go. Megan watched the scene with an unreadable expression. Then she coughed lightly, indicating it was time to go. Helena helped Lucas to the car, a black van with tinted windows and the Renewal Center logo painted on the side. The interior was clean and functional, with a special system for securing wheelchairs. The man in the suit adjusted Lucas in place, fastened the seatbelts and closed the door. Before the van pulled away, Lucas placed his hand on the window, looking at Helena with an expression of silent pleading. Helena placed her hand on the other side of the glass, feeling the tears finally escape. The van began to move, gliding through the wrought iron gate, leaving that tree-lined street on the Upper East Side, taking away the boy Helena had learned to love as if he were her own son. She stood on the sidewalk, watching the van disappear around the corner, feeling an immense emptiness open up inside her chest. Megan had already gone back inside the house, probably to make more phone calls, organize more things, control more aspects of the life she had taken over with frightening ease. Helena went back inside and up to Lucas's room. The room was silent, too tidy, as if it had never been lived in. The bed was made, the curtains were open, no toys were scattered on the floor. It was as if Lucas had never existed. Helena sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to cry. She cried for the child who had left, for the mother who was no longer there to protect her son, for the father who was so lost in his own pain that he couldn't see his sons. She also cried for herself, for the feeling of helplessness, for the certainty that something was wrong but not knowing exactly what or how to change it. Helena had grown up in a small town upstate, a place where everyone knew each other and doors were left unlocked. Her childhood was simple, but full of love. Her mother worked as a cook at a school, her father as a truck driver. They didn't have much, but they had enough. Helena was the oldest of 3 siblings, and from a young age she learned to take care of others. When she was 15, her mother got sick. Nothing serious, but enough that she needed help at home. Helena took on the responsibilities, cooking, cleaning, looking after her younger siblings. That's how she discovered she liked taking care of people, making a difference in their lives with small gestures of kindness. She came to the city at 20 looking for opportunities the small town didn't offer. She worked in several homes before arriving at the Anderson mansion. Some families treated her well, others saw her as just an invisible employee. She met Beatrice when Lucas was still little, before the accident. Beatrice was different from all the employers Helena had ever had. She insisted that Helena eat at the table with the family. She asked about her dreams, her fears, her family. She gave gifts not just at Christmas, but on random occasions simply because she saw something and thought of Helena. When Helena had a family emergency and needed to go back to her hometown in a hurry, Beatrice not only gave her the time off, but paid for her bus ticket and sent a care package of groceries to her family. Helena loved Beatrice not as an employer, but as a friend. And when the accident happened, when she saw that casket being lowered into the ground while Lucas cried in his father's arms, Helena made a silent promise. She promised she would take care of Lucas as Beatrice would have, that she would be her eyes watching over him, her arms hugging him, her heart loving this boy who had lost so much. But now Lucas was going far away, to a center that promised miracles but that Helena didn't know. And Megan was in charge of everything, with her calculated smiles and her poisoned words disguised as kindness. Helena wiped her tears and went down to the kitchen. There was work to be done. The house's routine didn't stop. But as she prepared lunch, her mind couldn't stop going back to Lucas. Had he arrived yet? Was he scared? Would anyone at the center care that he slept hugging his teddy bear? That he was afraid of the dark? That he liked to draw horses? In the afternoon, Robert came home. He walked in the front door with that same tired air, his tie half loosened, his heavy executive briefcase in hand. Seeing Helena in the living room, he asked, almost sheepishly, "Is he gone?" "Yes, Mr. Anderson. He left this morning." Robert nodded, as if confirming something he already knew, but didn't want to face. He glanced at the staircase, as if for a moment considering going up to his son's room, but then simply headed for his office. The door closed and Helena was left alone again with the heavy silence of that house. In the following days, Lucas's absence seemed to fill every corner of the mansion. Helena continued with her tasks, but she felt like she was on autopilot. She cleaned rooms that weren't used, prepared meals that no one praised, put away toys that belonged to no one. Megan, on the other hand, seemed more and more at ease. She reorganized Lucas's room, packing everything into boxes, saying that when he returned it would be a new beginning, and there was no need to keep things the old way. Helena watched, everything in silence, feeling a growing unease. There was something about Megan that didn't add up. The way she had appeared in Robert's life so quickly, the ease with which she took control, the way she always spoke about Lucas with the tone of someone who knows best. And now, with the boy gone, Megan seemed even more powerful, more present, more in charge of the situation. A week after Lucas left, Helena was cleaning the living room when she heard Megan on the phone in the office. The door was ajar and Helena, not wanting to eavesdrop but unable to help it, caught fragments of the conversation. "Yes, he's adapting perfectly. No problems. The father is satisfied with the reports. No, there's no need for visits yet. The center's protocol is very clear about that. We need to let their work unfold without emotional interference." Emotional interference, the words hammered in Helena's head. How could visiting your own son be an emotional interference? Helena felt a chill run down her spine. Something was definitely wrong. That night, Helena barely slept. Lying in her small room at the back of the house, she stared at the ceiling, thinking about Lucas. Was he also awake at that moment? Was he scared? Was anyone comforting him when the nightmares came? She picked up her phone and typed into Google, "The Renewal Center, New York." The results appeared quickly. A professional website, full of photos of modern facilities, glowing testimonials from grateful parents, descriptions of innovative treatments. It all seemed too perfect. Helena kept searching, going beyond the first page of results. That's when she found an old forum, an almost deleted comment, someone asking if anyone knew the center, saying they had doubts. The replies were vague, evasive. One person said to be careful. Another said they couldn't say much, but it was better to look for other options. Helena felt her heart race. She saved the links, took screenshots. It was nothing concrete, just a feeling, a discomfort. But it was enough to keep her awake until sunrise. The next morning at breakfast, Robert appeared with a slightly lighter expression. "Megan showed me pictures from the center. Lucas is doing well. It looks like he's adapting." Helena seized the opening. "Mr. Anderson, have you thought about visiting him? I'm sure he would love to see you." Robert hesitated, glancing at Megan, who was sitting beside him drinking her coffee. Megan smiled and answered for him. "Helena, dear, the center has a very specific protocol. The first few weeks are for adaptation, and visits can disrupt the process. It's all very professional, based on studies. Robert and I have talked a lot about this, and we think it's best to follow their recommendations." Helena felt anger rise, but she swallowed it. She knew she couldn't confront Megan directly, not there, not at that moment. But the seed of suspicion had been planted and was beginning to sprout. Something wasn't right with that center, with that woman, with this whole situation. And Helena, who had promised herself she would take care of Lucas, knew she couldn't just stand by and passively accept everything. As she washed the breakfast dishes, Helena made a decision. She would find out the truth about the Renewal Center. She would investigate on her own, quietly, without raising suspicion, and if she found out Lucas was in danger, she would do whatever it took to get him out of there, even if it meant losing her job, confronting Megan, or challenging Robert himself. Because at the end of the day, Helena wasn't just the nanny. She was the only person in that house who truly loved that boy. And true love doesn't give up. True love doesn't stay silent. True love fights. And Helena was ready to fight. The first few days without Lucas were the hardest. The mansion, already quiet, turned into a mausoleum of memories. Helena woke up early as always, prepared breakfast, but there were no more pancakes to make, no more chocolate smiley faces to draw. The routine continued, but it felt empty, pointless. She cleaned rooms that weren't used, arranged objects no one touched, prepared meals that were eaten in silence. Robert came home later and later. Megan took his place at the breakfast table, sipping her green tea while flipping through design magazines, planning changes to the house that Helena found unnecessary. The library would be turned into a yoga studio. The guest room needed a complete overhaul. The backyard could use a fountain. Megan spoke of these changes with enthusiasm, as if she were redesigning not just the house, but the lives of everyone in it. On the third day after Lucas's departure, Helena was folding towels in the laundry room when the doorbell rang. It was a delivery man with a large package addressed to Robert. Megan received the package and, before heading up to the office, casually mentioned to Helena that they were photos from the center, showing how well Lucas was adapting. "Can I see?" Helena asked, trying not to sound too eager. Megan hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Of course, dear. Come with me." They went up to the office together, a large room with mahogany shelves filled with books Robert never had time to read. There were first editions of American classics, old medical encyclopedias inherited from Robert's father, business and management books that looked like they had never been opened. The office also had a large window overlooking the garden, an imposing desk, and 2 leather armchairs where Robert used to sit to read contracts. Megan opened the package and spread the photos on the desk. There were about 20 professional photographs, all very well taken, with good lighting and perfect angles. Each photo had a small caption printed on the back, with the date, time, and a brief description of the activity. It was all very organized, very professional, almost too clinical to be about a child. Lucas appeared in several of them, in the hydrotherapy pool surrounded by smiling physical therapists in light blue uniforms. The therapists looked young, well-trained, with that look of professional enthusiasm that seemed rehearsed. In a physical therapy room, doing exercises with modern equipment Helena had never seen before. Sophisticated machines with LED lights and digital screens. In the cafeteria, sitting at a table with other children, all with identical trays in front of them, all sitting with the same upright posture. In a well-kept garden, holding a ball, but not playing, just holding it, as if posing for the photo. There were also photos of the facilities, wide, bright hallways, individual rooms with hospital beds and minimalist furniture, activity rooms full of equipment, the indoor Olympic-sized pool, the garden with its perfectly pruned trees. "See," Megan said, pointing to the photos. "He's doing great. Happy, well cared for, making progress, exactly what they promised." Helena looked at the photos carefully, picking them up one by one, examining every detail. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The facilities were modern and clean. The professionals seemed attentive. The other children were well-dressed and apparently healthy. But there was something in the photos. That bothered Helena. Something subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. It was Lucas's smile, or rather, the lack of it. In all the photos where his face was clearly visible, he wasn't smiling. His lips were neutral or turned slightly downward. His eyes, those expressive brown eyes Helena knew so well, looked empty. There was none of the sparkle of joy that should be in a child doing fun activities. There was none of the natural excitement one would expect from someone in a new and stimulating environment. Furthermore, Helena noticed other disturbing details. In every photo, Lucas was surrounded by adults. Never alone, never with just the other children. There was always an adult nearby, standing, watching, and although Lucas looked clean and well-dressed, there was something about his body that seemed different. He was thinner. His arms, which had started to gain muscle mass with the exercises at home, looked skinnier. His face was paler. his eyes slightly sunken. Helena picked up a photo where Lucas was in the cafeteria. The table was filled with healthy food, fruits, vegetables, proteins. But Lucas wasn't eating. He was staring at his plate with an expression Helena knew well. It was the same expression he had in the first few months after the accident, when sadness completely took away his appetite. "He looks thinner," Helena commented, trying to keep her voice casual. Megan took the photo from Helena's hands and glanced at it briefly. "I don't think so. It must be the angle. And anyway, the center has specialized nutritionists. They know exactly what each child needs." Helena wanted to argue, to say that she knew Lucas better than any nutritionist, that she knew when he was okay and when he wasn't. But the way Megan spoke, always with that absolute certainty, that tone that brooked no argument, made Helena swallow her words. "Can I keep one photo?" Helena asked. Megan hesitated again. "These are official photos from the center, Helena. They send them to Robert because he's the father. I don't know if it would be appropriate to hand them out." "I'm not going to hand it out, Megan. I just wanted a memento of Lucas. I've worked here for 2 years. I took care of him during the hardest time of his life. I think I deserve at least one photo." Helena's tone was firm, firmer than she herself expected. Megan noticed and after a moment nodded. "Take one, but just one." Helena chose a photo where Lucas was in the garden. It was the one where he looked the least sad, though he still wasn't smiling. She thanked her and left the office, tucking the photo into her apron pocket as if it were a precious treasure. That night, in her room, Helena placed the photo on her dresser and stared at it for long minutes. The more she looked, the more certain she was that something was wrong. That wasn't the Lucas she knew, or rather, it was the Lucas she knew at his worst moments, on the days when the pain was so great he could do nothing but exist. Helena picked up her phone and started researching the renewal center again. This time, she dug deeper. She used different combinations of keywords, searched in specialized forums, in groups for parents of children with special needs. She found the official website again, with all its enthusiastic testimonials, all its promises of miraculous recovery. But this time, Helena read between the lines. She noticed that many testimonials talked about discipline and a strict routine, about how the children learned to obey, to follow schedules, to not complain. There was praise for how the center broke bad habits, how it taught children to be emotionally independent. Helena felt a shiver. What kind of rehabilitation center prided itself on making 9-year-olds emotionally independent? Children that age needed emotional connection, affection, security, not forced independence. She kept searching and finally found something more concrete. An old article from a local newspaper, archived and hard to find, about a complaint that had been filed against the center 3 years earlier, parents alleging inadequate treatment, questionable practices, excessive isolation. The article was vague, didn't go into detail, and ended by saying the investigation found insufficient evidence to shut the center down. But the fact that there had been an investigation was already alarming. Helena saved the link, took screenshots of everything she found. She created a secret folder on her phone where she kept all the information. She didn't know yet what she would do with it, but she felt she needed to gather evidence, to build a case. Because if she ever needed to convince Robert that something was wrong, words wouldn't be enough. He would need proof. The days passed slowly. Robert continued his exhaustive work routine, coming home too late for any meaningful conversation. Megan continued redecorating the house, always on mysterious calls with suppliers, decorators, and, Helena suspected, the center. Helena maintained her routine too, but now with a secret purpose. Every free moment was dedicated to researching, to trying to understand what really happened inside the renewal center. A week after the photos arrived, Robert mentioned at dinner that he had received a medical report from the center. Lucas was progressing well in his exercises. The doctors were satisfied with his development. There would be a video call next week so Robert could see his son and talk to the doctors. "Can I join the call?" Helena asked, serving dessert. Robert looked at Megan, who answered before he could. "Helena, dear, it's a technical meeting. Doctors, physical therapists, the father. You understand it wouldn't be appropriate, don't you?" I took care of Lucas for months. I know every detail of his treatment, every exercise, every difficulty. I think my presence would be helpful." Megan smiled, but there was a hardness in her eyes. "The center has highly qualified professionals, Helena. They don't need information from a nanny. No offense, of course." Helena felt her blood boil, but she maintained her composure. "None taken, Megan, but I'm not just a nanny. I'm the person who was with Lucas when he cried in the middle of the night, the person who held his hand during painful exercises, the person who knew his fears, his hopes, his pain. That's worth more than any technical qualification." The silence that followed was heavy. Robert looked uncomfortable, pushing food around his plate without eating. Megan kept her smile, but her eyes were as cold as ice. Finally, Robert cleared his throat. "Helena has a point, Megan. She knows Lucas very well. Maybe it would be useful to have her on the call." Megan turned to Robert with a carefully calibrated expression of disbelief. "Robert, honey, of course Helena knows Lucas. But this call is about medicine, about rehabilitation techniques, about protocols. It's not about feelings or stories from the past. The doctors will speak in technical terms that Helena won't understand. It would be awkward for everyone." The way Megan spoke, always using that reasonable tone, always making it seem like she was thinking of everyone's best interests, was infuriating. And it worked. Robert nodded, dropping the idea as quickly as he had supported it. "Maybe you're right, Meg. Helena, I hope you understand." Helena understood perfectly. She understood that Megan had Robert completely under her thumb. She understood that her chances of getting close to Lucas, of knowing how he really was, were being systematically blocked. She understood she would have to find another way to uncover the truth. "Of course, Mr. Anderson. I understand perfectly." That night, Helena barely slept again. She lay thinking about Lucas, alone in that center, surrounded by strangers, with no one who truly knew him, no one who truly cared about him beyond protocols and medical reports. She thought of Beatrice and how horrified she would be if she knew what was happening. She thought of the promise she had made and how she was failing. The next day, Helena made a decision. She was going to the center. It didn't matter what Megan said. It didn't matter if they wouldn't let her in. She had to go. She had to see with her own eyes. She had to be sure her suspicions weren't just paranoia. The renewal center was in Westchester County, just outside of New York City. It was almost an hour's drive from the Upper East Side, but Helena didn't have a car. She would have to take the subway, then a bus. She used her day off, a Thursday, and left the house early, before anyone could ask where she was going. She left a vague note in the kitchen, saying she had personal errands to run in the city. The journey was long and tiring. Helena took the crowded morning subway, squeezed between executives with their briefcases and students with heavy backpacks. The air conditioning wasn't working properly, and the heat was suffocating. She changed lines twice, going up and down stairs, navigating the crowd with the determination of someone on a mission. Then she took a bus that took her out of the urban center, passing through increasingly distant neighborhoods, watching the landscape change from tall buildings to low houses, from sophisticated shops to local businesses. The bus dropped her off a few blocks from the center. Helena got off and stood for a moment, getting her bearings. The neighborhood was quiet, almost deserted at that time of morning. There were few houses, a lot of green space, wide and empty streets. She walked the rest of the way, her worn sneakers making noise on the pavement, her heart beating faster and faster as she got closer. She had mentally rehearsed what she would say, how she would introduce herself, but now that she was there, she felt the words slipping from her mind. The renewal center was at the end of a quiet, tree-lined street. The building was modern, with large glass windows and immaculate white walls. A high wall surrounded the entire property, with only one gate at the front where there was a guardhouse. Helena approached, trying to look confident. "Good morning," she said to the guard in the booth. "I'm here to visit Lucas Anderson." The guard, a middle-aged man with a bored expression, consulted a clipboard. "Do you have authorization?" "Authorization?" "Yes, ma'am, to visit patients, you need prior authorization from the administration. It's in the protocol." Helena felt her plan crumble, but she didn't give up. "I'm Lucas's nanny. I've taken care of him for 2 years. I just came to see him quickly to bring some things we forgot. I'm sorry, Mum, but without prior authorization, I can't let you in. Center rules. Helena tried to argue, to explain, to plead, but the guard was inflexible. Finally, frustrated and on the verge of tears, Helena walked away. But she didn't leave. She walked around the wall, looking for a place from which she could see inside the property. She found a spot where the trees grew close to the wall and allowed a partial view of the inner courtyard. It was a leafy oak tree that stretched its branches over the wall, creating a natural shade. Helena positioned herself behind the thick trunk, hidden but with a good enough view of what was happening on the other side. It was morning, around 10 o'clock, and Helena could see some children in the garden. She couldn't identify Lucas from a distance, but she watched the scene carefully. The children were in a line, all sitting in wheelchairs, arranged in perfect rows. There were adults around, dressed in white uniforms, watching. Some held clipboards, taking notes. Others simply stood still, like guards watching prisoners. The children didn't talk to each other, they didn't play. They just sat there in silence, waiting. The silence was disturbing. A group of 10 or 12 children should be making noise, there should be laughter, chatter, crying, any sign of life. But there was only silence. Every now and then, an adult gave a command that Helena couldn't hear from where she was, and the children moved in sync, as if rehearsed. They raised their arms at the same time. They turned the wheels of their chairs in the same rhythm. They lowered their hands together. It was like watching a military drill, not a therapy session. Helena watched for almost 40 minutes before she saw something that confirmed her worst fears. A child started to cry. It was a girl, Helena could tell by her long hair. The crying started softly but grew louder. One of the adults in white approached quickly, grabbed the girl's arm firmly, and pulled her out of the line. The girl resisted, tried to stay where she was, but the adult was stronger. He dragged her chair away from the other children, to a corner of the garden where Helena couldn't see clearly. The other children in the line didn't turn, didn't react, as if they were trained to ignore it. Helena felt a chill run down her spine. This didn't look like a rehabilitation center. It looked like a military training camp. Where was the joy? Where was the natural spontaneity of children? Why did everything seem so controlled, so rigid, so frighteningly organized? She watched for almost an hour, hidden behind the trees, until she saw something that made her blood run cold. A child, a boy, tried to leave the line. One of the adults in white approached quickly, grabbed the child's arm firmly, and pulled him back into place. There was no obvious physical violence, but the way the adult held him, the severe expression on his face, the way the child flinched, all indicated fear. Helena took her phone out of her pocket and started taking pictures. They weren't good photos. She was too far away, and the trees were in the way. But she managed to capture a few images of the courtyard, the children lined up, the adults watching. She knew it wasn't enough evidence, but it was a start. She was so focused on taking pictures that she didn't notice the guard approaching until he spoke. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" Helena quickly put her phone away, trying to look innocent. "Nothing. I was just resting. This is private property. I have to ask you to leave immediately. If you don't go, I'll have to call the police." Helena didn't want trouble. She raised her hands in a gesture of peace and walked away. "I'm going. Sorry." She walked back to the bus stop, her heart pounding. She had accomplished little, but it was something. She had photos, she had observations, she had confirmation that something was definitely wrong at that center. On the bus back, looking out the window at the New York cityscape, Helena began to formulate a plan. She needed more information. She needed someone from inside the center who could confirm her suspicions. She needed a way to communicate with Lucas. But most importantly, she needed to find someone Robert would listen to, someone whose opinion carried weight, someone who could make him question the decision to leave his son in that place. She remembered Dr. Edward Martin, the doctor who had been treating Lucas before he went to the center, a serious, competent man who had treated Lucas with kindness and professionalism. He knew the boy's complete medical history, his needs, his limitations. If Helena could show him what she was seeing, maybe he could help. She arrived home in the mid-afternoon, tired and frustrated but determined. Megan was in the living room, on the phone as always, laughing softly at something the person on the other end had said. Seeing Helena, she waved casually and continued her conversation. Helena went up to her room and transferred all the photos she had taken to her computer. She enlarged the images, adjusted the brightness and contrast, trying to see more details. The photos were grainy and shaky, but you could see the essentials. Children lined up like soldiers, adults watching. With harsh expressions, no smiles, no play, no spontaneity. She saved everything in an encrypted folder. It wasn't paranoia. If Megan found out what she was doing, she would surely find a way to get rid of her, and Helena couldn't risk losing her only point of access to information about Lucas. That night at dinner, Robert mentioned that the video call with the center would be the next day. Megan immediately took control of the conversation, saying she would make sure everything was organized, that she would prepare a list of questions for the doctors, that she would record the call so Robert could watch it again later. Helena watched everything in silence, eating without tasting her food. She wanted so badly to be on that call. She wanted to see Lucas's face live, not in carefully selected photos. She wanted to hear his voice, to try to catch what he couldn't say with words. She wanted to look for signs, for clues, for anything that would confirm or deny her growing suspicions. But she knew she wouldn't be allowed. Megan had made that very clear. And Robert, lost in his guilt and his work, didn't have the strength to oppose her. After dinner, while washing the dishes, Helena heard voices coming from the office. The door was ajar, and she recognized the voices of Robert and Megan. She approached silently, pretending to arrange a vase of flowers in the hallway while she listened. "Are you sure this center is the best option, Meg?" Robert was saying, and there was a hesitation in his voice that Helena hadn't heard in months. "Robert, honey, we've been over this. The Renewal Center has the best professionals in the country. You've seen the reports. Lucas is making progress. Why are you doubting it now?" "I don't know." Helena made some comments. She said Lucas looks thinner in the photos. Helena is a nanny, Robert. She's attached to the boy, and that's understandable, but that attachment is clouding her judgment. She sees problems where there are none, because she doesn't want to accept that Lucas is fine without her. The way Megan spoke, always painting Helena's concern as selfishness, as an unhealthy attachment, was pure manipulation. Helena clenched her fists, fighting the urge to walk into the office and confront Megan right there, but she knew it would be counterproductive. If she lost Robert's trust now, she would lose any chance of helping Lucas. "You're right," Robert said after a moment. "Sorry for doubting. It's just that sometimes I feel like I should be more present, you know, that I should visit Lucas." "And you will, honey. But the center asked for a few more weeks for the initial adaptation phase. After that, you can visit him regularly. You have to trust the process." "I do. I trust you." Helena moved away silently, feeling a mixture of anger and despair. Megan had Robert completely under her control. Every doubt was dispelled, every concern was minimized. And Lucas, alone in that center, was paying the price. Later, in her room, Helena picked up her phone and looked for Dr. Martin's contact information. It was almost 10 at night, too late to call, but she typed a message. A carefully worded message, trying not to sound hysterical or alarmist, but making it clear that she was worried and needed to talk. "Dr. Martin, this is Helena, Lucas Anderson's nanny. Do you remember me? I really need to talk to you about Lucas. He's in a rehabilitation center and I have some concerns. Could you spare a few minutes of your time? It's urgent." She sent the message and stared at the screen, waiting for a reply she knew wouldn't come until the next day. She lay down in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind was racing, thinking about Lucas, about Megan, about Robert, about everything that could go wrong. She thought of her own mother, back in her small town, who always said that a woman's intuition is never wrong. That when something feels wrong, it's usually because it is. Helena had always believed that, had always trusted her instincts. And now, all her instincts were screaming that Lucas was in danger. But how do you save a child when you have no concrete proof? How do you convince a father blinded by guilt and manipulated by an experienced woman? How do you fight against a system that looks perfect on the surface but hides something rotten underneath? Helena didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't going to give up. Beatrice had entrusted Lucas to her, even if implicitly, even if silently, and Helena would honor that trust no matter the cost. That night, staring at the dark ceiling of her room, Helena made a new promise. A promise to Lucas, to Beatrice, to herself. She would find out the truth about the renewal center. She would gather irrefutable evidence. She would find a way to get Lucas out of there. And when it was all over, she would make sure that place could never hurt another child again. The road ahead would be difficult, she knew. Megan was smart, manipulative, always one step ahead. The center seemed to have all its paperwork in order, all the right protocols. Robert was too blind to see the truth. And Helena was just a nanny with no resources, no power, no influence. But Helena had something no one else had. She had true love for that child. She had determination born from a promise to a dead friend. She had the stubbornness of someone who grew up fighting and never learned to give up easily. And sometimes, Helena thought before finally falling asleep, love and determination are the most powerful weapons of all. Helena's phone vibrated in the early hours of the morning. She was awake as she had been for the past few nights, thinking about Lucas, about everything she had seen at the center, about how to find a way to help him. She grabbed the device quickly and saw it was a message from Dr. Edward Martin. Helena, of course I remember you and Lucas. I'm concerned by your message. Can we meet today? I have a lunch break at noon. I know a cafe on a side street off Park Avenue near my office. We can talk there. Helena replied immediately, thanking him and confirming the time. Finally, someone who could help. Someone Robert respected, whose opinion carried weight. Dr. Martin wasn't just a competent doctor. He was an ethical man who had always put Lucas's well-being first. He was the one who had overseen the boy's care since the accident, who had chosen the best physical therapists, who had talked with Helena about every detail of the treatment. In the morning, Helena asked Megan for permission to leave in the afternoon, claiming she had a doctor's appointment. Megan didn't even look up from the magazine she was reading, just waved her hand distractedly. Helena realized that Megan was getting more and more relaxed, more and more confident that she had everything under control. The house already felt like hers. The staff already treated her as the true lady of the house. Robert already depended completely on her opinions. The cafe was small and cozy, with wooden tables and plants hanging from the ceiling. It was on a side street, away from the intense bustle of the main avenue. Helena arrived a few minutes early and chose a table in the back, away from the windows. She wanted privacy for this conversation. She ordered a coffee she didn't even touch, her hands trembling with anxiety as she waited. When Dr. Martin arrived, she felt an immediate sense of relief. He was in his early 50s, with graying hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and that paternal manner that was always reassuring, even in difficult situations. He wore a simple navy suit and carried a leather briefcase worn with time. "Helena," he said, sitting down and taking her hands gently. "Tell me everything. What's happening with Lucas?" Helena told him. She told him about the sudden decision to send Lucas to the center, about how Megan had appeared in Robert's life and taken control of everything with frightening speed, about the photos that arrived showing Lucas thinner, with empty eyes without any spark of happiness, about her visit to the center, what she saw of the children lined up in silence like soldiers, the adults watching with harsh expressions. She took out her phone and showed him the pictures she had taken, zooming in on the details so Dr. Martin could see. The doctor looked at the photos with an increasingly serious expression. As Helena continued to speak, she saw the concern grow on his face, the lines on his forehead deepening, his lips tightening. When she finished, Dr. Martin was silent for a long moment, processing everything he had heard. "Helena, this is very serious," he said finally, his voice grave. "What you're describing are not proper rehabilitation practices. Children need structure, yes, but they also need affection, freedom to express emotions, individuality. This kind of excessive control can cause profound psychological damage, especially in a child who has already been through as much trauma as Lucas." He took her phone and looked at the photos again, zooming in to get a better look. "You said you tried to visit and they wouldn't let you. Yes, they said I needed prior authorization, and Megan made it very clear there would be no visits for the first few weeks. She says it's the center's protocol. That is also extremely concerning. Legitimate rehabilitation centers encourage family visits. The family's emotional support is an essential part of recovery. Isolating a child like that goes against every protocol I know. In fact, Helena, I've heard of this center before. There are rumors in the medical community. Nothing proven, but enough that several colleagues avoid recommending it. Can you talk to Robert? Helena asked, hopeful. He respects you. If you express these concerns, maybe he'll listen. Dr. Martin hesitated, drumming his fingers on the table. I can try, but I need to be careful. I can't make accusations without more concrete evidence. Robert might think I'm interfering improperly, especially if this Megan woman convinces him I'm overreacting. She seems to have a lot of control over him. So what do we do? We need more information. Could you get access to Lucas's medical records from the center, or talk to someone who works there? Helena thought for a moment. I don't have access to anything, but when I was there I saw staff. Maybe someone would be willing to talk. There's a kitchen. I saw someone going in with different uniforms than the therapists. It's risky, but it might be our only option. In the meantime, I'll do some investigating on my own. I'll contact colleagues, see if anyone knows this center more deeply, if there's a history of formal complaints or investigations. I'll be discreet. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much. Helena, you're doing the right thing. This boy needs someone to fight for him, and clearly you are that person. They parted with a firm handshake, and Helena returned home feeling a little less alone. She had an ally now, someone with credibility, with knowledge, with access to resources she didn't have. In the following days, Helena went back to the center 3 times, always at different times, always careful not to be seen by the same guard. She watched, took photos when she could, made mental notes of everything. And finally, on a Tuesday afternoon, she had a stroke of luck. She was watching from a distance when she saw a middle-aged woman come out of a side door. She wore a grey uniform, different from the therapist's white ones. She was carrying grocery bags, probably heading home after her shift. Helena followed her discreetly to the bus stop. "Excuse me," Helena said, approaching. "You work at the renewal center, right?" The woman looked at her suspiciously. "Who's asking?" "My name is Helena. I took care of a child who's staying there, a 9-year-old boy named Lucas. I'm worried about him." The woman hesitated, looking around as if to make sure no one was listening. "I can't talk about the patients. It's against the rules." "Please," Helena said, and there were genuine tears in her eyes. "I just need to know if he's okay, if he's being treated properly." The woman looked at Helena for a long moment. There was something in her eyes, a sadness, maybe guilt. Finally, she sighed. "Look, I can't say much, but that place isn't what it seems. The kids suffer there. Not physically, you understand, but emotionally. Isolation, punishments for crying, schedules that are way too strict. I work in the kitchen. I'm not a therapist, but I see things. I hear things, and it's not right." Helena's heart pounded. "Could you help me? Could you take something to Lucas?" The woman grew even more nervous. "That's risky. If they find out, I'll lose my job. Please, he's just a scared little boy. He needs to know someone still cares." The woman thought for a long moment. Then she nodded. "What do you want me to take?" "A notebook, a small one, that can fit in a pocket, and a pen. That's all. So he can write, draw. Something that's just his." "I can try, but I'm not promising anything." Helena took a small notebook she always carried from her bag and a pen. She quickly wrote on the first page, "Lucas, I haven't forgotten you. You are not alone. If you can, write to me and tell me how you are. Helena." The woman took the notebook and put it in her bag. "I'll try to give it to him tomorrow. He's in room 12. "Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means." The woman nodded and got on the bus that had just arrived. Helena stood at the bus stop, trembling with anxiety and hope. She had done it. She had a line of communication to Lucas. Now she just had to wait. The next few days were agony. Helena didn't know if the notebook had reached Lucas, if he had written anything, if the woman from the kitchen would be able to bring back a response. She continued her routine at the mansion, feigning normalcy, but inside she was consumed by anxiety. It was on a Friday, almost 2 weeks after their conversation at the bus stop, that Helena returned to the center. It had been 2 weeks of corrosive anxiety, of sleepless nights, imagining what could have gone wrong. What if the employee had been caught? What if the notebook had been confiscated? What if Lucas had been punished for trying to communicate with the outside world? She stood in her usual spot, hidden behind the trees, watching the entrance to the center with keen eyes. The sun was strong that afternoon, and Helena could feel the sweat trickling down her back. She had brought water but couldn't drink, her throat too tight with anxiety. Finally, after nearly an hour of waiting that felt like days, she saw the woman from the kitchen. She came out the same side door as always, looked around carefully, made sure she was alone, and then discreetly waved to Helena with a quick flick of her hand. Helena approached quickly, her heart beating so loudly it felt like everyone around could hear it. The woman reached into the pocket of her grey uniform and pulled out the notebook, handing it to Helena as if it were dangerous contraband, constantly looking over her shoulder. "It was at the back of the page," the woman whispered, her voice urgent. "He wrote it when no one was looking. At night, I think. I found the notebook under his pillow when I went to clean the room. I almost couldn't get it without being seen. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means. Just do something, please. Those children are suffering. I can't stand to see it anymore." Helena opened the notebook with trembling hands. On the second page, in a child's shaky handwriting, Lucas had written, "Helena, I'm so scared. They yell when we cry. They won't let me call Dad. There's not enough food. I can't sleep. Please. Get me out of here, please. I'm scared of the dark and nobody turns on the light. I want to go home. I want my teddy bear. I want you, Lucas." Helena felt tears stream down her face. The words were smudged in places, as if Lucas had been crying while he wrote. The handwriting grew shakier as it went on, evidence of his growing desperation. At the bottom of the page was a simple drawing of a boy in a wheelchair, alone in a dark room. "This is evidence," the kitchen worker said, looking at the notebook. "Show it to someone. Do something." "I will. Thank you. Thank you so much." Helena clutched the notebook as if it were the most precious object in the world and ran. She caught the first bus that came, then the subway, not even thinking about where she was going. She just knew she had to act now. She couldn't wait any longer. She called Dr. Martin from the subway. He answered on the second ring. "Dr. Martin, I got it. I got a message from Lucas. He's asking for help." "What does the message say?" Helena read Lucas's words, her voice breaking several times. On the other end of the line, she heard Dr. Martin take a deep breath. "That's enough, Helena. That is evidence of emotional abuse. I'm calling Robert right now. I'm going to his house and she'll show him in person. Where are you?" "On the subway, heading back to the house. I'll meet you there in an hour. And Helena, you saved this boy. Know that." Helena got home before Dr. Martin. Megan was in the living room, on the phone as always. Seeing Helena enter, breathless, she frowned. "Where have you been? You look like you've run a marathon." "I had to take care of some things," Helena replied, going straight up to her room without further explanation. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Helena went down and opened the door before Megan. "Good?" It was Dr. Martin with a serious and determined expression. "Good afternoon. I need to speak with Robert Anderson urgently. It's about Lucas." Megan appeared in the living room, her expression of surprise quickly turning to suspicion. "Dr. Martin, what are you doing here?" "I came to speak with Robert about Lucas's situation at the center." "Lucas's situation is excellent. We receive weekly reports." "With all due respect, Megan, but I need to speak directly with the boy's father." At that moment, Robert arrived home from work, coming in through the garage door. Seeing the doctor in his living room, he looked confused. "Dr. Martin, did something happen?" "Robert, we need to talk. It's about Lucas and the renewal center." "What about the center? Lucas is fine. He's making progress." "Please, sit down. I need to show you a few things." They all sat in the living room. Megan tried to take control of the situation, but Dr. Martin was firm. First, He showed them the photos Helena had taken of the center. Then he opened the notebook and showed them Lucas's message. Robert read his son's words, and Helena saw all the color drain from his face. He reread it several times as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His hands trembled as he held the notebook. "This can't be true," he muttered. "The center has great references. The reports are always positive." "The reports show what they want you to see, Robert," Dr. Martin said. "But this message is from your son. It's his voice crying out for help, asking to be taken out of there." Megan stood up abruptly. "This is absurd. Helena has clearly manipulated the situation. She was always too attached to the boy. She's making things up because she can't accept that Lucas is getting better without her." "I didn't make anything up," Helena shouted, also standing. "That's Lucas's handwriting. That's his desperation. He's asking for help, and you keep ignoring it." "Robert, don't let them manipulate you," Megan said, her tone shifting to be softer and more persuasive. "The center is renowned. It has strict protocols. Of course Lucas misses home, but that's normal. It's part of the adaptation process." "The adaptation process doesn't include children being afraid of the dark with no one to comfort them," Dr. Martin said, his voice firm. "It doesn't include being yelled at when they cry. It doesn't include emotional isolation. This is psychological abuse, Robert, and it's happening to your son." Robert looked at the notebook again, at Lucas's shaky handwriting, at the drawing of the boy alone in the dark. Helena saw something change in his eyes. The guilt, the denial, it all started to crack, giving way to something else. Anger. A deep, growing anger. "We're going to get him," Robert said, standing up. "We're going to get him now." "Robert, don't be rash," Megan tried. "You have meetings tomorrow, important contracts. We can schedule a visit for next week." "Now," Robert yelled, and Helena had never seen him like this. All the passivity, all the distance, it all vanished. This was a father defending his child. "We're getting my son now, and you," he pointed at Megan, you knew what was happening and you hid it from me." "I didn't know anything," Megan protested, but there was panic in her eyes. Robert grabbed his car keys. "Dr. Martin, Helena, you're coming with me. We're getting Lucas out of that damn center." The drive to Westchester was tense. Robert drove in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Helena sat in the back with Dr. Martin, holding the notebook to her chest. When they arrived at the center, it was already getting dark. Robert got out of the car and walked straight to the main entrance. The guard tried to stop him, but Robert was in no mood for conversation. "I'm Robert Anderson. I'm here to pick up my son, Lucas Anderson, now." "Sir, you need authorization from the administration." "I don't need any authorization. I'm his father, and I'm taking him now. If you try to stop me, I'll call the police." The determination in his voice made the guard hesitate. He picked up the phone and made a call. Minutes later, a woman in a suit appeared. She was the director of the center. "Mr. Anderson, what a surprise. We weren't expecting your visit." "This isn't a visit. I'm here to get my son." "But, sir, the treatment is still in progress. We need at least a few more weeks." "There will be no more treatment here. Where is Lucas?" The director looked at Dr. Martin and Helena, trying to assess the situation. "Mr. Anderson, if you take Lucas now, you could compromise all the progress he's made." "Progress? Progress?" Robert snatched the notebook from Helena's hands and showed it to the director. "Is this progress? My son begging for help? Scared? Starving? Being yelled at when he cries?" The director turned pale when she saw the notebook. "This is a misunderstanding. We have rigorous methods, yes, but they are approved." "Approved by whom? By yourselves? Where is my son?" The tension in the air was palpable. The director realized she was losing control of the situation. "I'll get Lucas." "I'm going with you," Robert said. They went up together, followed by Dr. Martin and Helena. Through the sterile, cold hallways of the center, past closed doors from which no childish sounds emerged. Everything was too quiet, too controlled. They reached room 12. The director opened the door, and there was Lucas. Sitting on the bed in the dark, hugging the teddy bear Helena had packed in his suitcase. When the light came on and he saw his father, his eyes widened. "Dad?" Robert crossed the room in 2 strides and scooped his son into his arms. Lucas started to cry, not a cry of sadness but of deep, desperate relief, clinging to his father with all his might. His thin arms wrapped around Robert's neck as if they would never let go. "Get me out of here, Dad. Please, get me out of here. I did everything they said. I was obedient. I didn't cry too much. I promise I was good. Just take me home, please." The words tumbled out, broken by sobs. Robert held his son tightly, feeling how much thinner he was, his bones more prominent, his body trembling. He felt the weight of the world's guilt fall on his shoulders like a ton of bricks. "I'm getting you out, son. I'm you home right now, and I'll never let anyone hurt you again, never again." Helena felt tears stream down her face as she watched the father and son reunite. Dr. Martin placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of support. Robert carried Lucas in his arms, wheelchair and all. The director tried to protest, talking about paperwork, about liability, about protocols. Robert ignored it all. He went downstairs with his son, placed him carefully in the car, and they drove back to the city. On the way, Lucas didn't stop talking. He told them about his days at the center, about the fear, about how he cried in secret so he wouldn't be punished. He told them about the other children, about how they were all scared, but no one was allowed to talk. Robert listened with a broken heart, realizing how much he had failed his son. When they arrived at the mansion, Megan was in the living room, nervous. Seeing Robert walk in with Lucas in his arms, she tried to smile. "Lucas, it's so good to see you. How are you?" "You can pack your bags and get out of my house," Robert said, his voice icy. "Robert, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You knew what that center did, and you didn't tell me. Worse, you hid it from me when I started to have doubts. You used my son, my guilt, my weakness. I want you out of my house by tomorrow morning." "You can't do this." "Yes, I can, and I will. My lawyer will be in touch. Now get out of my sight." Megan looked at everyone, searching for support she didn't find. Finally, with one last hateful glare at Helena, she went upstairs. Robert took Lucas to his room. Helena followed them, helping to settle the boy in bed. Dr. Martin examined Lucas quickly, checking his vital signs, asking about symptoms. The boy was malnourished, dehydrated, emotionally shaken, but he was home. He was safe. "I'll recommend a child therapist," Dr. Martin said. "Lucas will need psychological support to process what he's been through, but he's going to be okay. With time and the right care, he'll recover." "Thank you, Doctor." "For everything," Robert said. "Thank Helena. She's the one who didn't give up when everyone else would have." Robert looked at Helena, and there were tears in his eyes. "How can I ever thank you?" "By taking care of him, Mr. Anderson. By being present. That's all he needs." "I will be present. I promise." In the weeks that followed, a lot changed in the Upper East Side mansion. Megan left, taking her belongings and her manipulations with her. Helena saw her leave on a rainy morning, carrying expensive suitcases and a resentful expression. There were no goodbyes. There was no remorse. Just a car that drove away through the gate and never came back. Robert drastically reduced his workload, delegating more responsibilities to trusted partners. Anderson Construction would remain strong, but now there was something more important than contracts and meetings. There was a son who needed him. He started having dinner at home every night, no exceptions. He helped Lucas with his physical therapy exercises, learning every movement, every technique, sharing the pain when the exercises were difficult. They talked about Beatrice almost every night, about how much they missed her, about the little things that reminded them of her, about how important it was to keep her memory alive, but also to move forward. They were difficult conversations, with many tears, but they were necessary. Lucas began to talk more about his mother, without the sadness completely paralyzing him. Robert learned to talk about his wife without the guilt consuming him. The physical therapy sessions continued, but now at home, with a therapist who came 3 times a week. They were tough sessions that left Lucas tired and sore, but he never had to face them alone again. Robert was always there, holding his hand, telling terrible jokes to distract him from the pain, promising ice cream afterward as a reward. Helena went back to taking care of Lucas, but now with Robert present as well. It was a partnership, not a replacement. Lucas started therapy with a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma. The nightmares still came, but now there was always someone to comfort him. Robert also filed formal complaints against the renewal center. With Dr. Martin's support and the testimony of the kitchen worker Helena had found as a witness, the authorities opened an investigation. Other families came forward with similar stories. Within 2 months, the center was shut down. One Sunday afternoon, 3 months after the rescue, Helena was in the kitchen making the chocolate cake Lucas loved so much when she heard laughter coming from the garden. She looked out the window and saw Robert playing with Lucas, pushing his wheelchair at high speed while the boy squealed with joy. It was a beautiful sound, a sound the house hadn't heard in a very long time. That night at dinner, Lucas looked at Helena and Robert and smiled. It wasn't a full smile yet. There were still shadows in his eyes, marks of what he had lived through. But it was a start. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said, looking at Helena. "I would never give up on you, Lucas, never." Robert took Helena's hand across the table. "You saved my son when I was too blind to see he needed saving. I'll never be able to thank you enough. Just promise me one thing, Mr. Anderson. Never leave his side again. He needs his father." "I promise. This time it's a promise I'll keep." And he did. Week after week, month after month, Robert was present. At doctor's appointments, at therapy sessions, at lunches, at dinners, in the difficult conversations about loss and healing. Helena remained too, no longer as a nanny, but as part of the family. The woman who fought when no one else would. The woman who heard what no one else could hear. Lucas continued to use a wheelchair. The doctors never promised miracles, and there were none. But he regained something much more important than movement in his legs. He regained security. He regained love. He regained the certainty that he was not alone. And one night, almost 6 months after everything, Lucas drew a picture. It was different from the sad drawings he used to make. It showed a house, not a big cold mansion, but a cozy home. Outside there were 3 people. A boy in a wheelchair, a man in a suit, a woman in an apron, all of them smiling. He wrote underneath, in a hand that no longer trembled, "My family." And it was. A family that got lost, that broke, but that learned how to rebuild itself. A family that understood that wealth can't buy presence, that guilt isn't solved with absence, that true love means fighting even when it seems impossible. The story of Lucas, Robert, and Helena wasn't about perfect endings. It was about imperfect people doing the best they could. It was about mistakes, redemption, and the courage to face painful truths. It was about a nanny who loved a child enough to risk everything for him, about a father who woke up in time to save his son, about a boy who survived the worst and still found the strength to smile again. And in the end, it was proof that sometimes, just sometimes, love really does conquer all. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Helena, Robert, and Lucas has touched your heart. If you were moved by Helena's courage, Robert's redemption, and Lucas's strength, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what marked you the most in this journey. Every day we bring intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and remind us that we should never give up on those we love. We'll see you in the next episode.